In this video, we're going to look at how to create a 2.5D motion parallax, which is basically taking a still photograph and animating it or turning it into a video. The idea behind this is you separate the objects in your photo into layers, and those things that are closer to the camera will move faster than the things that are farther away. For example, when you're driving on a freeway and you look at the mountains out in the distance, they seem to be barely moving or not moving at all, whereas the things that are closest to the car seem to be moving the fastest. And this creates the illusion in a photograph of having 3 dimensions. So here is one example. And you can see that looks like the building is slowly zooming out and the clouds are coming forward. And then here is another example. And that one looks even more like video footage because they've separated it into multiple layers and they're creating different speeds. So let's look at how to do this in Photoshop. When you're looking for images to do this effect with, it's best to find an image that has something in the foreground, something in the middle ground, and something in the background. Having at least 3 layers will create more depth and sell the effect more, but you can do it with something that has 2 layers, like I'm going to demonstrate here. So we've got this picture. It looks like a dragonfly here on this rock. It's kind of this blurred out background. We're going to separate this into 2 different layers. So first I'm going to unlock this layer, and I'm going to go ahead and duplicate it. And so now we've got 2 different layers. This top layer, I'm going to just select the rock and the dragonfly and delete the background out. So I'm going to attempt the new object selection tool, see how good of a job this does. Actually really good. If you really wanted to make this look good, you could come in and you can delete out some of this blur that's in this section, which for the sake of time we're not going to do in this. So we'll call that selection good. And then if I hit delete right now, it's going to actually delete what we actually want to keep. And you're not going to be able to see as well what you're deleting if you have both of your layers visibility turned on. So I turn off the eyeball on the one you're not working with. All right. And then I'm going to invert my selection. So instead of having this selected, I'm going to select everything else that is not currently selected. So we'll go to select and then inverse. And so now it's everything else. I hit delete and that's what I've got remaining. So it looks good. I'm going to go ahead and hide this layer for a moment and turn on the background of the bottom layer. And on this layer, I actually want to completely get rid of the dragonfly and the rock and patch that hole with a background that looks similar to this, so that as we move the rock and the dragonfly, you don't see any holes or any overlapping things that don't look quite right. So you could do this a few ways. I'm going to take the lasso tool, and it doesn't need to be a perfect selection. You just want to somewhat close. So go ahead and try that again. And once you've got your selection made, you can go to edit, and then you're going to go to content aware fill or fill. In this case, the layer I have selected is the wrong layer, and the visibility is turned off, which is why these are grayed out. So if I select the correct layer and I go back to edit and go to fill, I'm going to pick content aware. I'm going to hit OK. It's going to look on the outside of that selection and try to patch the inside with similar elements, and it did a pretty good job. It's going to give you different results each time, so if you don't like it, you can try it again. The other way that you could do this is to take the spot healing brush and then paint over the area and just kind of show you how that works. Some areas in here that don't look real convincing. There's some edges, but once you turn this layer on, you're not going to be able to really tell. So that's a fine job for now. Now that we have got both of those separated onto layers, we can start to animate. To do this, we need to be able to see the animation timeline or the video timeline. So if we go up here to Window and then down to Timeline, that will show up. and we're going to actually create a video timeline. You got a couple options. You can create frame animations, but we're going to actually choose the video timeline and click on video timeline. If you choose the wrong one, there's an icon on the bottom here that will let you switch back and forth. So this is the one we want. And then you probably want to resize your timeline so that you're able to see what's going on here, and then you can work on it a bit easier. So in order to make this work, if you look in each of these layers, got a position, an opacity, and a style, but I also need a transform which doesn't currently exist in the properties. So if I right click on each of these layers, I can convert them to smart objects. And once I do that, you can see that transform is now there. So what we're going to do here is maybe we'll have the dragonfly on the rock slowly grow like it's coming closer to us and slide to the right, and we'll have the background just slowly sliding to the left. So we'll start with the background layer, and currently this is about 5 seconds long. Let's go ahead and make that a bit shorter. Let's go to 3 seconds just by dragging the end of the clip. And there's a chance also that your clips might be not stacked up how you want them. You can slide them around. But once that's done and you've got layer 1 selected, so let's select that bottom layer. We're going to go to transform. We're going to put the marker right at the beginning, and we're going to click this stopwatch, which will add a keyframe. A keyframe is basically just a marker that tells something what to do and when to do it. So I'm going to click on that stopwatch. That'll place a keyframe there. I actually want the background to be bigger so I can actually slide it through. So I'm going to hit Control T to size it, and I'm going to go ahead and make this a bit bigger. That's probably good enough. It's not going to be moving too fast. I'm going to hit enter, and I've got a little extra room there I can now work with and slide this through, as you can see. And so we're going to start that in that position. I'll then move my marker to the end, and I'm going to click on this diamond to add another keyframe, and I'm simply then just going to click here with my move tool selected. I'm going to drag this to the left, and so as I drag this through, you can see the background is slowly moving. Looks like it's animated. All right, maybe that's a little too fast. If it is, you can move to your marker to that keyframe, or you can hit this arrow, and maybe we don't want it to go quite so fast. I'm going to pull it back just a little bit, so it's a much more subtle movement. Maybe we'll even go just a little slower than that. So let's see the speed. That looks great. Okay, next layer. So we close this layer. We go to layer, the layer on the top. I'm going to select that. I'm going to move my marker to the beginning, and I'm going to hit transform. Once I've done that, I can hit Control T, and I also want to size this up just a bit. That way I can move it through the image. So size it up just a little bit. Move it back off here to the left. And then we're going to move the marker, hit enter. Move your marker to the opposite end of the timeline. Add another keyframe by hitting that diamond, hit Control T. I'm going to make it just a little bigger so it looks like it's kind of growing as it moves. Hit enter. And then I'm going to slide it through. And I'm going to go ahead and close my layer so we can see. And this is the final product. If I hit my space bar, it'll play. And it looks like we've got an animated photo. Let's look at another way to do this. So this image doesn't have a foreground, a middle ground, and background to move really. So in order to make this an animated photo, we would need to add our own elements. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and create, I'm going to unlock this background layer. I'm going to create a new layer, and clouds. I'll make another layer of clouds on the top. Let's go ahead and rename this background. So on the first clouds layer, I'm going to take my brush tool, and then I have downloaded some free brushes on the internet that include some cloud brushes, which make this much easier. So I'm going to go here to my brush. I'm going to find the brush set that I want. And I've got a bunch of different clouds here. So if I go ahead and select these clouds. And this particular cloud brush actually just randomizes size, which is really helpful. So I'm going to go ahead and just start clicking, not with pink though, with like white. And I can just start clicking and you can see what that's going to do as far as adding some clouds. I'm actually undo those. I want my brush to be bigger to start with, like some bigger clouds here. A little more cloud cover. And then we'll do the same thing on the second layer. And we've got clouds. So now we've got 3 layers. We've got a background layer, a cloud layer in the middle, and a cloud layer on the top. And so now we just do the same thing to animate them. So we're going to go to the timeline, and you go to Window Timeline if it's not showing. Create a video timeline. I'm going to right click on each of these to convert them to a smart object. And then we'll animate them individually. So on layer 0, I'm going to go ahead and open that up, move my marker to the beginning, and once again I'm going to make this shorter for time's sake. And we're going to move the marker to the beginning. We're going to click on the transform and add a keyframe. I'm going to hit Control T, and I'm going to make this bigger. I'm actually going to hold Alt to keep that kind of centered. So maybe we'll have it start in this position and it will move down. So I'll then move my marker to the other end after I hit enter. Move my marker to the other end, and I'm just going to take my move tool and I'm going to slide that down. So it's going to just move like that. So it's moving down, and maybe we'll have the cloud layers move opposite. So I will next go to the cloud layer in the middle. And in fact, I'm going to go ahead and lock these other 2 layers just so I don't accidentally move something. So I'm going to take that cloud layer in the middle, move my marker to the beginning, click on transform, and I'm going to need to make these bigger since they cut off on the edge. So I'm going to hit Control T, same thing, I'm going to hold Alt, I'm going to make these a little bigger, hit enter, and I'm going to go ahead and move them. So that's moving down, right? The row is moving down. So I want the clouds to move up. So I'm going to move them opposite. So I'm going to move those down, get them into position. And then I will move to the opposite side. I'm going to click on my keyframe, and then I will drag those up. And you can see my background layer is moving, so I'm going to go ahead and lock that back up. And if you need to, you can hit Control T on your layer, and you can slide it that way. So I'll have those slowly moving up. Then I'm going to go ahead and lock that layer and go to the top layer and do the exact same thing. And since these are closest to the camera, they're on the very top, we're going to make them move the fastest. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the beginning, hit transform, hit Control T, hold Alt, make these quite a bit bigger. Hit enter. I'm going to go to the opposite end. I'm going to add a keyframe by clicking the diamond, hit Control T, and those even faster, something like that. Hit enter, and let's look at the final product. If I hit spacebar, you can see it playing, and we basically got an animated photograph with different layers of movement. That looks pretty good. So when you're finished with one of these, you need to export it. There's a couple ways you can do this. If you want to turn it into a video clip, you can hit the menu here at the end of the timeline, and you can hit render video, make it an H.264, which will make it an MP4 file. You can give it a name, select where to save to, and you can go ahead and render the video. If you want to save it as an image or a graphic, you can go to File, Export, Save for Web, and this will turn it into a GIF or a GIF, so you want to make sure that that's selected. It's a photo or an image format that saves transparency, and that'll take a second to load because this is quite a big image. Once that's done, you can resize it if you'd like to, so maybe I'll make this 800 pixels wide, and I'm going to go ahead and hit save, and it will then let me choose a location and give it a name. I'm going to save it right onto my desktop, hit save, And once it's finished, we can go to the desktop. And here's the image. Let's go ahead and double click on it and play it, and you can see we've got an animated photograph or a 2.5D parallax photo.